This is genuinely the most absurd thing I've seen all offseason for the Boston Bruins, as a recent report has linked them to captain of the Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid. I'm going to be breaking it down, going over why this is actually a crazy possibility. We also got a report about Nikolaj Ehlers and his real potential for a Boston Bruins winger here in this offseason. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a crazy one. You're not going to want to miss it. But remember, we also have a lot more content coming over the next week as we get towards the draft and free agency. And as you see, we are so close to 7,000 subscribers. If everybody watching this video right now hit that button, we would be there by the end of this video. Now, let's get into it because we got no wasting no more time. We got to get into this report. And I want you, first of all, right now, to take this with a grain of salt, because this is from Bleacher Report. They're not known to be the greatest hockey analysts, but this is something that, we kind of want to break down and go over why this could be a real possibility, although very distant, a real possibility. Okay, so this is the report that first came out from Bleacher Report analyst Adam Gretz. Has taken a look at some teams that could try to lure Connor McDavid away from the Oilers. One of the teams that he mentioned as a possibility is none other than the Boston Bruins. Now, he goes into this, kind of goes into a few other things. We're going to go into his quotes here and go over what he had to say, because things make sense, but they are a bit of a landslide kind of thought process here. He says, even though they have rapidly arrived in the NHL's mushy middle of mediocrity, the Bruins do not seem prepared to start rebuilding or tearing things down to be more than what they were this past season, and more what their roster figures to look like upcoming season. They'll need a game-changing number one center. So, he's acknowledging the fact that the Bruins center depth is not what we want it to be. We're still looking for one. We have Elias Lindholm currently as the number one center. He's not the number one center. We know that. He's a good number two, number three on a really, really good team, but what we saw last season just simply was not good enough from the middle. And I feel like I don't need to pull this up, but Connor McDavid is exactly what not just the Boston Bruins, but any team needs. Missed a few games due to injury earlier this year, but 26 goals, not really known to put the puck in the back of the net. This season particularly, of course, 60 some odd goals the other season, but he goes back and forth. But either way, 100.67 games, still phenomenal player. Number one minutes. There's no need to actually pull this up. He's still great on defense. 28 years old. He's putting every category at the top of the NHL. And going into his idea with the Boston Bruins and going over Adam Gretz's kind of idea with Connor McDavid, this is what he also had to say and continue with. That has been their biggest need since Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci retired. And the likes of Casey Middlestad, Pavel Zacha, and Elias Lindholm are not going to satisfy it. McDavid obviously would. The Bruins are in the big market and are an Original Six franchise that still has eyes on winning. That could potentially be appealing to McDavid. Now, Connor McDavid has had some quotes come out and say, we're not really planning on doing anything just yet. I'm going to hold off. Of course, do have a contract coming up, but we got to wait and see what happens. He's going to do the best for himself. And he's come out and said that throughout the season. He's not been afraid to do that, and especially after these playoffs where they lost in the Stanley Cup Finals, second year in a row to the Florida Panthers. It really goes to show that the Oilers are a good team. However, they are missing some serious pieces, and that serious piece is a goaltender. Now, I'm not saying the Bruins would completely turn that around, when Connor McDavid, his decision, but having Jeremy Swayman locked up, having a very young defense locked up, as we saw that Mason Lohrei signing earlier today, and having a forward core that is, pretty young at this point now and still getting a lot of these guys locked up, it may be enticing for Connor McDavid, who is in the final year of his deal on a $12.5 million contract, to potentially explore some other options in free agency. Now, this is something that's going to be crazy because we know McDavid's going to be making a lot more than $12.5 million. And AFP Analytics currently has him listed as a 4-year, $15 million deal. Now, this is something that I really don't think we can really go out and say, yes, this is confirmed or whatnot, but I think $15 million is the lowest number. But the years are something that really intrigues a lot of people because he will be 29 when the deal expires currently. Of course, after next season, would be 33 if he did sign this exact deal, 4 years, $15 million. And that way really allows him to kind of go get that other pay increase once the cap rises once again. But I don't see, and we know McDavid's not that type of player that would really go out here and try to wait for one specific contract or the cap to rise. He don't really care about money. He wants to win, and that's been pretty evident as well. But $15 million is a lot of money, especially when you're already paying David Pastrnak $11 plus. And that's a deal that is very tough to kind of go out and justify, but one that the Bruins certainly have to think about in any realm if Connor McDavid even looks like he will be available from the Edmonton Oilers. Now, one thing as well that could be also a little bit enticing is when we do look at the Bruins cap space over the next few seasons, we're not too worried about this year, 25-26. We know we got $23 million to spend, but next year, 26-27. The Bruins have $36 million to spend, and just say, it's by some odds, McDavid's available. Once again, take this with a grain of salt. $15 million. You have $21 million to spend, and you do have some other people to re-sign. That's going to be something that they got to be take care of course, but they have the money to do it. And that's something that I think would be very enticing for Connor McDavid, that they have a team that's looking and at least hopefully to get back in the playoffs this year. They have the money to do it. They can also make more moves. So let me know what you think about that. I think it's absurd. I very, very far off that it could ever happen, but the fact that someone's throwing it out there, we have to talk about it. I want to get your opinion on it as well. But we got to jump into our next topic here. And this one comes about another guy that is more possible, much more possible in this case. And someone that I think would be a big fit for the Bruins. And someone that has been already kind of reported, rumored about. And this comes from Jake Donovan here. Dig a bit deeper. Of course, we know that Nikolaj Ehlers is a great player. So dig a bit deeper, and it gets more impressive. Since entering the league as a first-round pick in 2014, Ehlers has scored 21 or more goals in 8 of his 10 seasons. He also eclipsed the 60-point mark 4 times. It's rare for a player that consistent to become available, let alone one that still has several good years ahead. And that is absolutely the case for Nikolaj Ehlers. And when we do go take a look at his stats, of course, this year, did miss a few games once again. 69 games played for him this year. 24 goals, 39 assists for 63 points, and didn't really get the first-line minutes here in the Winnipeg Jets team. They were a team that was very deep. A lot of people were surprised by how deep they were, and playing, solid defense, solid numbers. He's been someone at 29 years old that has been very consistent, and having those numbers that Jake Donovan said consistent for since the 2014 draft is something that don't come by very often, let alone, really ever, if it's apart from a pretty deep trade. So if the Bruins are even in discussions, even in looks about a guy like Nikolaj Ehlers, you have to go out and kind of put your name out there. We know the Bruins are trying to make a big splash. Don Sweeney's been very vocal about trying to get back into the playoffs. We can try to get back as soon as possible, and I know they're not going to be rushing it. They made that pretty clear by the trades that they made in the last trade deadline, getting rid of some of the veterans on this team, Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo, Brad Marchand, Trent Frederick. Even though they're some of the, not necessarily oldest players on the team, they're players that have been around for a long time. They're trying to get a new identity, and I think Nikolaj Ehlers would really bring that depth goal scoring to this team and make it so they have that confidence going throughout the lineup rather than just trying to rely on a top 6, maybe even really top line for this team. And, we know that, of course, on this money as well, that I will pull up once again, kind of going back to the whole idea with McDavid. You got a lot of money there, but you got to assume that around $6 million of this is going to be going to Morgan Geekie, maybe even 7 here this year. There's going to be some more guys that are going to be re-signed. There's going to be more you want in free agency this year. It could really impact next year's cap, but I mean, when you go look at a guy like McDavid, when you go look at a guy like Ehlers, two sides of the same coin. Very good players, one significantly better, but immediately will go out and help this team. So I want to know what you guys think about Nikolaj Ehlers. Of course, this is the one that I think we really should focus on more so, but the fact that McDavid was in conversation, we had to put it up. But we're going to have another video about Nikolaj Ehlers sooner rather than later, I would assume, so stick around for that. But when we get to it right now, I still just want to get your opinion to kind of test the waters on it, because we know the Bruins have some moves that need to be made. They're going to try and make those moves, and whether it's going to be the right ones is yet to be determined, but it's looking good. Ladies and gentlemen, it's looking really, really good for this Boston Bruins team right now. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think there's going to be a big draft, big free agency. We may see some very shocking things come down. You won't want to miss it. We're going to have it all here on the channel. But as I mentioned before, you guys have been killing as of late. I very much appreciate your support. But that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing up, though. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.